Welcome back to Court TV Live. Good Friday afternoon. I'm Ashley Wilcott. Thank you for joining us. Is there a serial killer in small-town Kansas? And is animal cruelty really a gateway crime? Police in Parsons, Kansas are investigating the cruel death of a third dog in less than 1 year in that small community. And a fourth dog was shot and harmed, but it did survive. This is a case that really hit home for the police in Parsons because a 3-month-old German Shepherd, there on your screen, owned by a local police officer, was found decapitated in his own backyard. That adorable little puppy there was named Ranger. Now, the good news is, if there is any, a reward for Ranger's killer has passed $34,000. The police chief said it is really a shocking development that the $30,000 offered has not loosened any tongues. That is what leads us to believe that it is one person acting alone. Talk about a disturbing case. Joining us now to help discuss this, forensic psychiatrist Carole Lieberman. Carole, thank you so much for coming on with us. Obviously a very disturbing set of facts. Let's start right out of the gate. What does it say to you when you now have four dogs that have been injured, 3 of those killed, 1 of those decapitated in 1 year's time?
Yes, it's a very foreboding statistic. What's particularly, it's not only that this is a horrible crime in itself, and, they're talking about calling it a hate crime and so on, cruelty to animals, all of that. But the worst part of it is that torturing animals, and one of the dogs at least was tortured, and certainly killing animals, that is one of the signs in the triad, the sociopathic or psychopathic triad, of someone who is going to grow up to be or is already a sociopath or a psychopath. So the triad is bedwetting beyond the age of 12, arson, setting fires. It could just be, playing with matches and setting fires on paper, or more serious, and the animals. So they need to catch this person, not only because, of course, it's horrible that all these puppies are being destroyed, but because this is someone who's going to be going on to more serious crimes.
When you say more serious crimes, in your opinion, could that be people? Could this be a serial killer in the making?
Yes, absolutely. In particular, the first dog belonged to a female police officer, and she had her police car parked in the driveway, so they knew that it was, and her dog was in the yard, and they took the dog away, shot the dog, decapitated it, and brought it back, and she discovered it a couple hours later. And so the police thought that, and in fact it seems likely that it was a targeted attack, another way of being violent towards police officers.
So let's look together. I think that we have the information about each of the 4 dogs. You've alluded to 2 of the causes of death, but I want to talk about all 4 of them found. Draco was the one found that you mentioned. He was wrapped in a blanket on December 29th, 2021. A child found that dog wrapped by a bridge. The dog had been beaten to death, also strangulation. Ranger is the one that we just showed the picture of, found decapitated. That was the one you just alluded to, the pet Carole of the police officer. Blue is shot to death, and then the other 4th was Zeus, and that animal was shot, that dog, but did survive. I want to go backwards a little bit because you said torturing, killing of animals can be indicative of a sociopath or a psychopath. And, growing up, when we would joke, would be like, oh, you're such a psychopath. Well, obviously, that is not the meaning of the word. What do those 2 words mean to the rest of us lay people who aren't in your field?
Well, it's someone who is sadistic, who is often charming. That's why, for example, serial killers who, seduce in a way, get people to come with them, and then they kill them in another location. They're very charming. That's one of their characteristics. And but cold-blooded, totally sadistic. Totally, they could cut off the head of a puppy, for example. And it starts young. These signs that I was just mentioning, this triad, starts in childhood. And we saw that, with Ethan Crumbley. We saw that with Cruz, from the school shooter in Florida. The parents, of course, often miss these signs and don't put them together and don't get help. Or if they do get help, this is another problem with serial killers, that even those who are brought to a mental health clinic or hospitalized even, if they fall between the cracks, which often is what happens, then they go on and aren't medicated and aren't hospitalized. And like Cruz, for example, should have been hospitalized against his will. Ethan, of course, Ethan Crumbley should have been given psychiatric treatment early on. His parent. This is the kind of family that grows a psychopath or a sociopath, a serial killer. I mean, Ethan, in a way, was a serial killer, although they were all just in that one day in that one school.
I could talk to you for such a long time about all of this, Carole, but let me break it down to a few, I think, really important things that you just said. The first is, this is a town of 10,000 residents, according to the U.S. Census. And when you describe so articulately and so easy to understand that it's someone who's charming, cold-blooded, starts young, and these animals are disappearing from the same geographical area, it feels to me like it shouldn't be too difficult to identify potential suspects. Would you agree or disagree with that premise?
Well, I know you think of a Kansas town like that, everybody's like Mayberry, right? Where you should be able to notice if there is one person who is not a Mayberry type person. But, they are often loners. They often either they don't have a job or they work in a like a laborer type job, jobs where they're not really interacting with people very much. I just hope, that they are looking, I mean, obviously it seems like they're looking very hard, but I hope that they redouble their efforts because, as I said, I think, particularly the example of the policewoman, if that really was targeting her because she was a policewoman, they could, after the dog could be a child.
And let's talk about the FBI has also said that animal cruelty is a gateway crime, and we have information about what they had to say. Specifically, it is a predictor of current and future violence, including crimes of assault, rape, murder, arson, domestic violence, and sexual abuse of children. And again, that comes from the FBI. It echoes what you're saying. Let's talk a little bit more now about Ethan Crumbley that you mentioned, because one of the things that we know, according to the reports, is that he took a mason jar with a severed bird's head and liquid in it and set it in the boys' bathroom on a toilet paper dispenser in a boys' bathroom at the school. That severed head, should that have been a signal, a sign, a red flag?
Yes, that and so many others. Ethan has been crying out for help for quite some time, and his parents have ignored him. They bought him a gun. They literally put the gun in his hands. The school ignored him. They called in his parents, but then they didn't look in his backpack, and they sent him back to class just because that was one of the things that the school is being sued, and of course his parents are in jail. But that was one of the things that the school did wrong, that when the parents didn't take him home, which of course was outrageous, but when they didn't take him home, the school should not have sent him back to class. They should have called 911, had the police come and bring him to a psychiatric emergency room. I mean, he was doing everything but having a plane skywrite in the sky. I am going to shoot up the school, or I am going to kill somebody.
And worst case scenario in Parsons, Kansas, if this person is not caught, they could become one of these predictors of a serial killer. So it is so important. Carole Lieberman, I know that you are a best-selling author, a psychiatrist. I can't thank you enough for joining us today with your great information. To all of you viewers, if anyone has any further information, please contact the Parsons Police Department. The number is 620-421-7060, or there's a tip line, 620-421-7057. You can also send an email to tips@parsonspd.com. Please, anything that you can do in that regard.